You're tuned in to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we are going to be talking about the dad bod. It is real, it is something everyone's talking about, and we are going to dig right in. But before we get into today's topic, Brandon, how is everything going with Noah this week?
So things have been going pretty well. We are ramping up steadily to the time when I'm about to head back to work. For those of you who have been listening, or if you're just tuning in, I've been on leave with my son, which has been great. He's about 5 months old now, and he started daycare this week.
How's that going?
For the first time. So it's rough. The first day, yikes. So just to paint the picture of how much challenging it can be to drop off your kid at daycare for the first time. My wife and I went together so we could both experience the pains of doing it. And we go in on day one, there's other babies, nice environment, everything's supposed to be great. We hand off our son to one of the, workers, and we're kind of like looking around the room, getting a good feel for it, wanting to make sure that he feels comfortable. And he cries. And then it all went downhill very fast. He starts crying. We start crying. We don't know if we should console him. We don't know if we should let them console him.
Right.
Like, I try to be the person who goes into the mode of trying to take care of everything. And specifically my wife. So something that I think the dad role a lot of times is like the hard wall of stone, like you kind of encase the heart a little bit in a little bit of that wall and try not to get into the emotion, because that, say, your wife or your partner's feeling a little bit more of that, and you don't also want to be too emotional so that you can't help them.
Yeah, you're trying to be the anchor.
This is good description. Exactly. I didn't cry because I wanted to try to help my wife get through the moment. And so, wrenching as it is, I tried to be the one who was like, he's going to be fine, he's going to be okay, let's just go ahead and leave so that he, can get associated and get comfortable. And like, that's just a tough job to do. So, we talk a lot of times about how there's jobs that dads can't do. Like, we can't breastfeed. But there are jobs that we can't do. And one of the jobs that I think we can do is this job of taking care of everybody in this regard, like being a little more emotionally strong. And it's not that my wife's emotionally weak, but having a moment to be the stronger one and try to help move through the moment, because it's going to be good. Like, the logical part of your mind says it's going to be okay. Yeah. And so I had to do that, and I did, and I kind of took us out, and we left. And then we were like, okay, let's go do something to distract ourselves so that we can forget about this moment. So we're like, okay, let's go get breakfast. So we drive in silence, just thinking, or trying not to think. And, I'm using, GPS to drive to where we're going, just like a normal day. And I use the Waze app, and it has this neat setting that it rolled out not long ago where it can give you reminders when you get to destinations of things, like, or if you're leaving, like, hey, don't forget to lock the house, or don't forget to lock your car, or whatever. So one of the things that I set up a while ago was a reminder when I get somewhere to bring my kid with me.
Oh, no.
So
I see where this is going.
It sounds great because you're like, oh, that's so awesome. No one wants to leave a kid in a hot car, like, oh, the nightmare scenario. So whenever I leave somewhere or get somewhere, the app pops up with, like, Daddy, don't leave me. And like, I set that up so it would be like cute and be like, hey, Dad, I'm here. And it used to make me laugh. And then today is the day when my son's not with me for the first time. We get to the destination. It's like, you've reached your destination. Daddy, don't leave me. No. I'm laughing, but I'm like crying a little bit. You can't tell in the studio because it's actually painful to even just relive it. Because we just went through all that moment, and I'm trying to be tough, and then I just destroyed that moment all over again.
Oh, that's rough, man. Oh, God. And it's been a hard, I guess, 2 weeks in a row now, because I remember this time last week, you mentioned that you were allowing Noah to cry it out, going to sleep in his crib, and that you guys cried more than he did. Yes. And then this week it's just another waterworks. I feel bad for you guys.
I tried to be the logical one. I'm like, listen, if he's going to go to daycare, he needs to know how to be able to sleep on his own. He needs to be able to take naps and be comfortable soothing himself. So we had to go through the tough moment of the cry it out, which is like the parents crying it out. It's like the joke that I make. You're like, I'm going to cry more than him. And then he learned it. He's great. And the same thing with the daycare, right? Like we left and he was crying and it was gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
But then when we go and we pick him up, he's smiling and he's happy. Like you don't get to see what happens after you leave. But, the nice people that work there are like, oh, he calmed down after like 10 minutes. He just had to get used to everything. And now it's been a couple of days, and like every time I go and I pick him up, he's happy, he's smiling, awesome. He's having a good time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know, Jesse, your kid's been in daycare for a little while longer. You know that like they're having a good time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's what I explained to my wife before is like he gets a better experience there than he would staying home with two working parents that are working even if they're working from home, because he's got the instructors or caretakers or whatever you want to call them that are with him all the time. And, and he's got other babies his age and even a little older, which has its own benefits around him that he's learning from and, socializing with. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's I've said before, do whatever feels right for you and your situation. But if you're thinking about daycare, it's something like there are hard moments. There's dropping him off on the first day. There's not knowing where he is and, worrying about whether he's safe or whether he's happy or, and then obviously getting sick like David did the past few weeks with the croup that went around at our daycare. But there are so many benefits. Like it's really definitely worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, Jesse, you hit it on the head. There's one day that you have to go through, like day one. You've got to get through it. It's going to suck. There's the occasional moment when you think about your child being gone and being at daycare and you worry, but let those moments happen and then you get to move on. And all the rest of that time, hopefully you're not thinking about it as too much and stressing about it. Or if you are, you're thinking like, wow, they're getting to do all this cool stuff. Like my second day, my son got to take part in music class. They do it every week. And I'm like, well, I would have never done that with him. That sounds fun. Like he's having a good time doing things that he wouldn't have gotten to do with me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Jesse, what's been going on with you guys this week?
Well, so David is finally almost over the, I mentioned last week that we discovered it was croup that was going around at daycare. Basically just a virus. It's not necessarily very dangerous, but makes you run a fever, gives you a bad chest cough, runny nose, that kind of all the works. So David's almost over that. Now he's back in daycare every day, although my wife woke up sick this morning, so I think she caught a little bit of that from him.
No.
Yeah. But things are good. He is getting really good at standing, of course supported, grabbing onto something and pulling himself up or just kind of leaning there for support. I had to lower his crib this week because he was able to, from lying down, grab onto the sides of the crib and pull himself up to a standing position. And where
funny.
it was, he was it was like chest high for him. So, he left unsupervised, he could probably fall out.
Possibly,
maybe, So that's something that dads, if you haven't gotten there yet, you're going to have to, your crib is probably going to start out pretty high up and you're going to have to lower it as the kid gets bigger and as he kind of gets better at pulling himself up and more curious about his surroundings.
Big step.
Yeah, very, very big step. But he's been just talking a lot still, sitting up, unsupported, getting more active, more curious, crawling around. And, our next step now, we're thinking about baby-proofing the house, which is going to be, you'll hear plenty about that on this podcast because that's going to be an odyssey.
We'll do an episode just about baby-proofing, I'm sure, and how much fun it is.
Yeah.
I just always go back to the episodes on sitcoms where adults can't understand baby proofing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to open things that are now locked. So it's how do I do this?
Yeah, I've been to friends' houses before where they have the doorknob protector thing. It's like a little plastic orb that goes around the doorknob and you have to push it in a certain way in order to get it work. And I can never figure it out. So, you know, it's baby proof. It's also
baby
Jesse proof.
proofing or is it adult proof?
Yeah. I think it's just idiot proofing.
Perfect.
Yeah, so let's get into today's subject. We are going to be talking about the science of the dad bod. It is no secret that as you go through the pregnancy phase and having a baby and early childhood, a lot of the changes that are going to be happening in the mother's body are going to be mirrored a little bit by changes that are happening in the dad's body, hence the dad bod. You gain a little weight, you put on a little paunch, you get a little softer around the edges. If you read articles online about it, they compare it to Chris Pratt before the Guardians of the Galaxy days. When he had the kind of the Parks and
Parks and
punch.
Recreation.
Yeah, or they'll say John Hamm or Paul Rudd. Pre-Ant-Man. That's the trend. It's like these guys have the dad bod, and then they get superhero movies, and then they get,
they actually work out,
which is something that dads don't do. You notice that these superheroes are never fathers.
No, they're estranged fathers.
Hawkeye, and I think he retired. Anyway, that's a subject for another day. So while I was thinking about the subject, I did a little bit of research, and I leaned on the expertise of people a lot smarter than me. And I looked at a couple of articles, one from Time magazine and one from Salon magazine. And these were both a couple of years old. This is something that kind of entered the public conversation around 2015, and people still talk about it. It's still a thing. And there's debates, on what is the science behind it? Is it good or bad? Is it creating, unfair standards between men or women, where it's okay for men to have the dad bod, but no one talks about the mom having the mom bod and whether that's okay. And that's a totally legitimate subject to talk about. We're just, today we're going to focus on the dad bod specifically and what you can do about it. Speaking from experience, first of all, I started gaining weight actually before we got pregnant, and that was just due to some lifestyle issues, quitting one job, starting another job, fluctuations in how much I exercise and what I eat, and also my blood pressure. But once we found out that we were pregnant, I started gaining what they call that sympathy weight, which is something that a lot of dads go through. I don't remember, Brandon, if you had that experience.
Yeah, I did. Similar kind of experience. And I think what we're going to talk about, like with the dad bod as well, is it's just kind of a part of the experience. Yeah. Really. You're not necessarily doing anything wrong because you're gaining weight. It's just almost kind of to be expected to a certain degree. And the sympathy weight, I think, is a good example because as your wife is going through pregnancy, obviously gaining weight because the baby's growing, it's also you're not exercising probably as much or maybe at all at a certain point, like in the third trimester, you can't, for example. So if your partner's not exercising, you're probably not exercising. Right. That was the case for us. Like we used to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. We had a membership and everything, and we knew that as soon as we got pregnant, we were going to have to stop that at some point. We're not going to pay for something we can't use. So we canceled the gym membership, and of course, as a result, stopped going to work out regularly. Right. So it was very easy for both of us to just start, gaining weight. Me just because I had to change my lifestyle because of the pregnancy as well.
Yeah, that's something that kind of happened with us too. Of course, the mom is gaining weight naturally as part of the process of carrying a living baby inside of her tummy, and I kind of sort of gained that quote sympathy weight, and it was due to again less exercising, changes in what we're eating, and then that's something that we don't talk about as much, the sympathy weight once you have the baby and those first few days, weeks, months, years of being parents. But that's an area where your lifestyle really changes, especially in the very early stages where you are up all night with a kid, you're sleeping in 2 to 3 hour blocks, waking up, staying up for a couple hours, and going back to sleep. Your sleep schedule's totally disrupted. And as a result, you do what you got to do in terms of eating and in terms of exercising. You stop exercising because there's absolutely no time. And you eat whatever is readily available, cheap, doesn't require a lot of prep time because you have to devote all of that time to the kid. We kind of got into a habit in the first few months of, I would go out and pick up Chick-fil-A. And then, after that, we would be so stressed out from the kid that I would go out and get ice cream for us, and that was just a little bit of comfort food. And, I've said this before in previous episodes, but it's definitely not beneficial to kind of guilt yourself over that. That's something that if you need it, go for it. Don't make a habit of it and do what you can to kind of counteract it. But it's going to happen. And as I've read from these studies, it's not all lifestyle. Your weight gain is not due to just you not being a healthy person. There are biological reasons behind it. So the first article I'm going to talk about is from Time magazine back in 2015, and they based this article on a study that was published in the American Journal of Men's Health by Dr. Craig Garfield, who was a pediatrician at Northwestern University. Basically, Northwestern they took 10,000 men over 4 phases over the course of, I think, 2 decades. Basically, they looked at these 10,000 men and how their BMI, their body mass index, changed over time. Within that, they kind of split that between non-fathers, what they called resident fathers, which are dads that are living with their kids, and non-resident fathers. So dads who are maybe involved in parenting but are not living with the child. And what they found was really interesting. There's a lot of sort of parallels and dips and dives, but basically non-fathers, once they get past sort of fatherhood age, they experience a decrease in BMI over time. Guys who don't have kids tend to lose weight as they get older. Guys who have kids tend to gain weight as they get older. And I mean, that's kind of common sense if you think about it. You know, if you don't have kids, you're probably not eating as many brownies. You're not having as many pizza nights. You're not, you're not foregoing mornings at the gym because you have to drive the kid to pre-K.
Sure, you've got more flexibility.
Exactly. And then when you are a dad, of course, a big part of that also is marriage. Something they noted is that the lifestyle of married people is sometimes less healthy than the lifestyle of non-married people. And that's, again, because, I mean, you're in sort of a codependent relationship where you have to worry about 2 people as opposed to just yourself. So there's less time to really focus on health sometimes.
And so I think one of the things that I read on this article is that, yeah, it's expected of parents for them to experience some weight gain, but don't go panicking too much because, the dad bod isn't known for gaining 50 pounds. Right. It's a punch, as you said. You're gaining some weight. And I believe the study actually noted that I think on average there was a weight gain of like 5 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 pounds
so
as opposed to
it's definitive
that
you're going to gain some weight in some ways, but it's not drastic. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary. If you change your lifestyle after you're being a father and then you just never try again to be healthy and exercise, sure, you're going to be beyond that average. But Jesse's point here and kind of the point of these articles about the dad bod and the science behind it is some of it is, biological. Some of it is just the nature of the way it's going to be for parents versus non-parents. And you don't have to be freaking out if you're a dad. You're going to gain some weight, but some of it is just naturally going to happen.
Exactly. And what another study that was picked up by Salon magazine actually pointed out is that a lot of this may not even be parenthood related. It's just related to being a guy that gets older that may be kind of exacerbated by fatherhood. But one big cause of weight gain as men get older is a decrease in testosterone, and that's just a natural thing that happens. As you get older, your testosterone levels go down, and your testosterone, of course, it controls a lot of things in the male body, from the way your body is composed to how your muscle mass compares with your fat mass. So basically, decreased testosterone means instead of building muscle, you're more likely to build fat. Now, the link that they found, and this is kind of, I'll say controversial because it's still being debated, different studies will tell you different things, is that lower testosterone may actually correlate with a longer lifespan.
Interesting.
One thing that they pointed to, and I don't know really how scientific this is because it's kind of a historical study, is that they looked at eunuchs in Korea in like the 13th through 17th century. So these are young men who were physically castrated, often just as a part of like the imperial system of Korea at the time. And what they noted is that these young men actually tended to have longer lifespans, at least when they look at the records that were kept of all these men back in the day. Now, whether that longer life also means a higher quality of life is kind of debatable. I mean, you lower testosterone sometimes means obesity. Sometimes it means lower muscle mass. It may mean it's harder for your body to fight off infection. There's risks to your bone health, your heart health, that kind of thing.
So don't go making any drastic life choices about eunuchs living longer. Good point.
Exactly.
We're not advocating any lifestyle changes.
And what also this study found is that it's something I've kind of noted in myself, and I've mentioned to my wife before, hey, now that I'm older, I don't know why, but I feel dumber than I did when I was like in high school, for instance. And the conclusion that we came to was Well, life's harder when you're an adult. When you're in high school, it's easy
Right.
to feel smart because your intelligence is measured by how well you do on tests. And you don't have to worry about also how good you are at your job or paying bills or how well you can remember all of the things that you have to do as an adult. So it's easier to kind of feel smart because also people will tell you all the time, oh, you're such a smart young man. And that doesn't really happen past.
Oh, you're such a smart 30-plus-year-old man in the middle of your life.
Exactly. But what the study noted is that low testosterone can be associated with poor cognitive function. You know, your brain probably relies on that hormone to kind of speed the process up, you know, firing off the synapses and that kind of thing. It also leads to decreased mobility, reduced sexual function, lower energy levels. Of course, these are things that are more pronounced as you get older than we are. You know, you're talking about your 40s to your 70s. You start to see those kind of problems, decreased mobility, erectile dysfunction, those kind of things. Those things happen in young men, but not quite as often. But that goes to show that when you start to gain weight as you get into your late 20s, your early 30s, some of that has to do with being a dad and the lifestyle changes, but some of that is just coincidence by way of the fact that you're getting older, your body's producing less testosterone, and it's preparing for old age by producing less of those hormones.
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, you feel a little bit better about this, dads, because, you know, your dad bod isn't just something that happens because you made the choice to become a dad. The two are kind of linked just because of the timing and the age. And, you know, what Jesse's talking about here with these studies is that it's actually connected to things that have nothing to do with parenting in some instances, just the age. You're just getting older. It's a little harder to stay fit. Maybe you have a little less energy from lower testosterone or less desire to be fit. And then there are the kind of markers that do have to do with parenting, like the lifestyle change that happens, less flexibility and free time, etc. So there's good and not bad, but bod, you know, just dad bod.
It's not good or bad, it's just bod.
It's just bod. All right, good. So let's talk a little bit about some of the maybe things that we're doing or just some other ideas that we've surfaced to help you from a fitness perspective.
Totally. So I found an article that a fitness writer named John Finkel wrote, Fitness for New Fathers, How to Avoid Being a Fat Dad. This was published on theartofmanliness.com. And basically, the article was based on a book that he wrote called The Dadvantage, The Fitness Plan for New Fathers. He's a guy that has worked with athletes, celebrities. Basically, he's a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, that kind of thing. And he's a speaker as well. And he pointed out a lot of the same things that we've talked about. You know, as you become a father, you have less time to work out. You know, like Brandon here, you might give up your gym membership because there's really just no time to keep it up and make it worth the money. But just because those habits go away doesn't mean new habits can't spring up in some places. So he points out a lot of really cool little life hack kind of ways to find time to stay fit, even when you have no time. So one thing he points out is you've got all these little moments in the day as a dad. While you're waiting for the shower to warm up in the morning, that might be about 30 seconds or so for that temperature to get nice and hot. That's a good time for you to drop and do some push-ups. At night, when you're giving your baby the bath for the evening, especially in those early days when they can't really crawl away, or if you've got like a crib nearby to set them down in. While you're waiting for the bath to fill up, that might be a good time to do some crunches, that kind of thing. While you're warming up a bottle.
Absolutely.
You know, this is something that dads, if you're ever watching the kid alone at home, or if you're helping out your wife by heating up a bottle when she's bottle feeding as opposed to breastfeeding, I mean, that varies. You know, that could take 5 to 10
minutes. Yeah, it could take several minutes.
Minutes, exactly. Yeah, so that's a good time for you to get a little exercise in. I mean, you're not going to be able to go out and run a lap around the park, but, you know, maybe it's a good time to do some sit-ups or to run in place or do some jumping jacks.
Jumping jacks, yeah.
Exactly. While you're waiting for your computer to boot up, you know, if you're at the office or if you're working from home, that's a good time to get a little exercise in. Now, one thing that I do in the mornings that is not a lot, I'm working on expanding it, is owning a dog means I'm required to be a little bit active because I got to get out and walk that dog every day so that she doesn't do her business on our rug. So there is 15 minutes kind of built into my day where I'm at least kind of walking around even if I'm not jogging. And that may be right now the most active I am during the day. But that's something that what I have the opportunity to do is to evolve that. Maybe it means getting up 15 minutes earlier and turning that 15-minute walk into a half-hour walk, and then working in some exercises right after that, kind of before the kid wakes up. Because, you're going to be busy and have your hands full with the kid while the kid's awake. But once that kid's asleep, your time sort of becomes yours again. And that's a good opportunity to kind of use that time. Now, Brandon, I know that you told me that you guys have actually started looking at a gym again, and this gym has something special for you.
Yeah, so one thing that we tried to find was a gym that had a daycare option. So we did have a gym membership before we got pregnant that we had to drop because we couldn't go all the time. No daycare option. It was, adults, right? So that's what the gym was there for. This gym is like the local YMCA, and they have a daycare built in that's just a part of your monthly membership. So it's actually not very expensive to join like a YMCA. They tend to be a little on the cheaper side, and those are more family-focused places. It actually has a great gym setup, got the treadmill machines, got all the different types of things that you would want, lots of weight options, and the daycare being built into the price is a great way where you can go work out and your kid is watched, where you can't go to the gym with your child without somebody watching them, and you wouldn't want to do that where like one of you is watching while the other's working out. That's kind of weird. So it's a way to almost go as a family and try that out. So we haven't tried that yet, but we're ramping up to that. Now that my son started daycare, we're going to kind of start easing ourselves hopefully back into that and try to help out with getting back on track with some healthier lifestyle.
That's awesome. What I'm picking up from this conversation is that we're both sort of looking into the future and saying, okay, we're maybe not doing what we need to be doing right now, but we have opportunities, and this is kind of a good impetus for us to actually sort of push ourselves and actually do it. Because I think one major hump that is hard to get over when you're a dad is motivating yourself to take that time to work out, because you have so little free time and sometimes so little energy because of the lack of sleep, that it may help to have someone to kind of push you over that hill. So I think what we're kind of doing right now is sort of challenging ourselves and saying, okay, now that we're talking about it, let's actually do it. And you've already made some solid plans joining that gym. I look forward to us checking in with each other in the weeks to come to kind of see how that's going with each other.
Yeah, certainly hope it goes well. And so that's something around like the personal health, exercise, helping your body feel good by working out. But one of the other things that we've been doing just all across the pregnancy and before, and that we are keeping doing that I think has been somewhat helpful, is using a meal service. So we use Blue Apron, so they deliver 3 meals a week to us, and it's something that we found really helped us be healthy before we had a kid. It worked really well with if you're working out as well, because the meals are designed to be a little lighter. They're not just healthy foods. Like there's burgers, there's steaks, there's things like that, but the portion sizes tend to be a little bit smaller. It's all kind of geared toward having like a little bit of a smaller calorie count toward the meal, because it's like just designed for your portion and one other person's portion. There's no food waste.
Right.
There's no excess. There's no leftovers. So that's been really helpful. We're not just like pigging out on big portions just because we made a ton of food. We feel like we have to eat it. And then there's no leftovers, which, can be good or bad if you like having leftovers for other meals. But it also keeps you from, again, overeating. And then the other thing that we've found is because we have those meals coming, we don't go to the grocery store as much, which it's helpful in 2 ways. I viewed it first as a financial thing, because that's the trade-off. Like, I'm paying for the meal service, but I'm not going to the grocery store as much. So that made me feel good about making that investment for the meal service, because it can kind of seem pricey at first. But that was how I justified it. There's a financial trade-off. The second thing, which I didn't notice right away, is that because you're going to the grocery store less, you are not doing any of that impulse buying when you're at the grocery store. So I went the other week to get like some essentials, and I came back with soda, and I came back with snacks. I got brownies because I'm like, I haven't had these in forever. Why don't I make some? And then of course I eat them. So that's another aspect that's the health kind of component of not going to the grocery store, is you don't have to get all the things that you don't really need, and you can rely on the meal service to keep you full without getting any of the excess stuff.
That's awesome. What I like about it is that it kind of keeps you away from, the 7 p.m. getting off work at the end of the day. Oh man, I really need dinner. We haven't had time to make plans. Let me just drop into the local, Zaxby's or whatever and pick up something.
Yeah, it definitely cuts down on going out to get fast food because you already have stuff at home and you don't want to waste it and you've already paid for it. Mm-hmm. So it helps on that front as well.
That's awesome. One thing that we have done, and we've done it kind of sporadically off and on, is what I mentioned in previous episodes is what's called time-restricted eating. And it's not so much a diet as it is a way to kind of schedule out your meals so that you are eating your day's worth of caloric intake between, say, for instance, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., where you're kind of condensing it all and then you're giving your body the rest of the day to digest and begin burning fat. So Ashley and I discovered the time-restricted eating idea in the first few weeks after bringing the baby home, and we decided to give it a shot. And, 3 or 4 nights a week, we would be able to do it where I would eat breakfast at 8, we would eat dinner at 4, sometimes I would eat my last meal while I was at work, and then we'd come home and not eat the rest of the day. But with my wife breastfeeding, you're burning a lot of calories doing that. Like that's a lot of exercise for your body to go through. So we found out that she was actually feeling kind of weak from that. And she also noticed that her milk production was going down. And that might not happen to every woman. Your wife might be able to do it without experiencing that decrease in milk production, but she was having a harder time with it. And we figured, well, maybe it's because we're not taking in as many calories during the day. So, we kind of eased up on that. And we still do it, sometimes. Like, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, I'll come home from work, my wife will come home from work, and we won't eat the rest of the day. We'll have maybe a coffee, and then that'll be it until breakfast the next morning. What I've noticed is that although my weight still fluctuates, it's kind of within a happy sort of range where I'll gain 2 pounds, I'll lose 2 pounds, but it won't kind of be more drastic than that.
Nice. You've kind of staved off There's a consistent growth in weight or anything like that.
Yep.
Just kind of keeping it normal,
keeping
it even.
Exactly. A little equilibrium there. Again, it's something that may not work for everybody, and the jury's out on whether it's good for you, whether it's actually effective, or whether maybe there are other factors at play. But the study that they did, and the study I'm looking at is in Medical News Today, it was published in July of this year, was the mice that they did this study on, the ones that they did the time-restricted eating to did experience decreased caloric intake, better metabolic health, and a slight weight loss. So, that's something that's worked for us. It's also the kind of thing that you don't have to stick strictly to in order to get the benefits from. I think a lot of problems that we and, men and women face is they look at something that looks difficult. Oh, that diet looks hard. Right. I'm not going to be able to stick 100% to that. So why even bother?
Right. Or it's all or nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost nothing is all or nothing when you're thinking about getting healthy. You don't have to join a gym and go every day.
Right.
If you miss a week and then pick it back up the next week, that's cool. A great quote from one of my favorite guys in the world, Terry Crews. He was doing an AMA on Reddit, and basically a user asked, I am finding it hard to get motivated to go to the gym. What can I do? And Terry Crews basically responded saying, look, go to the gym and don't even work out. Like, go in there, sit down in the lobby and read a magazine for an hour. Do that for a few weeks and see how you feel. Just take baby steps if you have to get into the pool before going into the deep end. Obviously just walking in is not going to make you healthier, but if there's little lifestyle changes that you can make that will mentally kind of get you over the hump of doing what you thought was impossible, start there, start small, get the benefits where you can, and build from there. You don't have to jump into hard mode. You don't have to go 0 to 60. You can kind of rev up that engine slowly.
Nice. I like that. Kind of build it into your day-to-day routine. It doesn't have to be every day, but build it into your routine in some way, baby steps, because then it'll be that much more common for you to be like, oh, okay, this is when I go to the gym. Or, I haven't been, in 2 days, I'm going to go back today. Or I go every other day. So I like that. That's a nice tip. And who doesn't love Terry Crews?
Exactly, yeah. And be gentle with yourself when you fail. You're going to screw up. You're going to get so hungry that you're like, screw it, let's just get some Burger King. There's really...
Or something better than Burger King.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. That's a bad example.
Splurge.
Yeah. But there's no benefit to you shaming yourself for screwing up once in a while. Go easy on yourself. Go easy on your partner. And just take it as it comes. Dad bod it's unavoidable that it's going to happen, but it's not a death sentence. It's something that you can manage. You can stay healthy. You can find little ways to do it. One good example it comes from my dad. I was talking to him on the phone last night and just kind of recalling memories. Growing up, he was always in good shape. Even through early childhood, going into my adulthood, as he gets older, he's in his late 50s now, and he's still in good shape. He doesn't have very many health problems. And what he attributes it to is having a workout routine. He didn't go to a gym. He wasn't, like a hardcore weightlifter. He didn't run sprints or anything like that, but he had a home gym in the garage. All through my childhood, I have vivid memories of him, lifting weights, that kind of thing. And, just a little bit of that throughout the week is what kind of kept him healthy and kept him going. And it was there in the home. So he didn't have to, leave the house for an hour and a half. He could be there. And that was actually something that as I got older, I got to join in. And that was sort of a father-son bonding thing, was being able to work out with my dad.
Very nice.
So, that's another thing that guys, as your kid gets older, that baby's not going to lift a barbell yet, but, as he gets to be 8, 9, 10 years old, if you're working out around him, you're providing a good example, and you're also providing a really good opportunity to bond with that kid. So just something to keep in mind down the road. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Dadsplaining. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, if you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to go old school, you can drop us an email at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com.
Cool. Brandon, what are we talking about next week?
So next week, we're going to talk about what it's like being a stay-at-home parent. We've both gotten a little bit of a flavor of that, and we'll talk a little bit about what it was actually like versus what we thought it would be like.
So until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, I got a dad joke for you. Why did the coffee file a police report?
Why?
It got mugged.
It's so stupid. It's great, though.
Thanks for listening.